All right. Good evening, Revelation family. So grateful that you're here on today. I have with us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I have with me on today Dr. Craig Adams. He's one of the Bay Area's best, well-known um, clientele of individuals are the all stars, and I say that because he is my personal therapist that I see on a regular
Okay.
basis, and that's only because dealing with y'all. Okay, so
Hey,
I
Lord.
needed the help along with it, but I recognize as an African American man and just a man alone that life has its own challenges, and if you're not careful you can fall into a state of depression, anxieties, if you don't have someone that you can share your information with. And I'll be honest with you, everybody that says they're your friend is necessarily the person that you want to share your intimate secrets with. You need somebody that can be trusted, and he understands that because he carries all that weight, similar like I do as a pastor, because I don't share your information, but it's my burden that I carry. And so I'm extremely thankful. I'm thankful to Mike Jones, Reverend Mike Jones, who's on here with that sexy picture um, here on tonight. I thank him because he had brought it up in January about mental health. He had shared his own challenges with mental health issues and how to deal with it. And it just inspired me. And so I was uh, asking Dr. Adams, he's like, man, I don't normally do this, but he's going to do this for us on tonight. And so, without any further ado, how we're going to do this, I need you to mute your mics so there won't be any conflict with that. So make sure that your mics are muted. And he's going to do his presentation and introduction. He's going to address some of our questions that we had as we go. And if you have a question, I'll be monitoring that. We'll just chime in as we go. But I want to introduce one of the best man of God therapists in the world, Dr. Craig Adams.
All right, Pastor, you put a little bit too much on it, but it is a pleasure being here. Praise God. And after all that introduction, I start with a disclaimer. I do not have the answers to everything going on. In fact, I'm sure America is about sick and tired of hearing all the experts, because research has shown the experts are only 50% correct, just like the general population. But we are in a pandemic. We've been in it for a while. It is weighing on us, and we're still trying to figure out how to maintain your mental health throughout this process. So just a quick review as to what's going on. First of all, you can't avoid the stress. I don't care how strong or how flexible and spontaneous you are dealing with things in life. It's just too much going on all at the same time. The stress comes basically because of the unknown. Anytime we have to deal with the unknown, it creates anxiety. And you could see the anxiety in the beginning with all the hoarding that occurred. I mean, toilet paper, come on now. But people were hoarding rice, beans, food products. They thought the entire world was going to close down. But that's just a human response to fear, hiding, blaming everybody for what's going on. So people in positions of leadership, instead of giving confidence and a sense of security, they're just pointing fingers back and forth. Your fault, my fault, China's fault, instead of how are we going to deal with this? And then on top of it, the unknown gets grown out of proportion when you're confined and can't interact with other people. So we get placed on our sheltering in place, and that increased the anxiety. When anxiety increases, each of us does different things to help release the emotions. The gym's closed down. You're not going to exercise. You can't interact with people. Minimal social contact. Loss of opportunities for physical touch and caressing loved ones and whatnot. Everything that usually calms you mentally and spiritually. Churches closed down. I mean, they were all eliminated at once. So you can't help to have the increase in the anxiety and the depression. Jobs closing down. People were under financial strain, wondering will they have jobs when the thing opens up again, or you did have a good job and it's paying you to stay home. But this is even stressful, stacking up money for the first time in your lives because you don't ain't got nowhere to go and spend it. So you're eagerly waiting for an opportunity to go somewhere and spend this money that is stacked up rather than using it to pay off debts or whatever you have. You just got to get out and escape. And it's like having all this money and nowhere to go. But the worst thing is the monotony. Those of you that got Netflix, I'm sure you done go scroll through and checked out every movie that you thought would be of interest by now. They run out after a while. People making puzzles. You get tired of building puzzles after a while. You done read every book you want to read. But the monotony will cause you to start doing some stinking thinking. Being alone, confined, nowhere to go. That idle mind is that devil's workshop. I believe your mind is the number one portal the spiritual world has of entering your being. And the devil has been busy for the last year or so. So what's the outcome? We tried to take care of ourselves, but not in the right ways. Everyone started baking. You couldn't find yeast anywhere, couldn't find flour. What's the consequence of that? Just about everybody gained weight. So now they feel bad because they're overweight. People are confined and can't get out of the house. So all the married couples have to now look at each other 24/7, 365, and don't have time to miss one another because you're stuck in the same household all the time. So now everything gets on your nerves that used to be lightweight before. Your children are going to act out. They can't go out and play. They can't go to the park. They can't go to the skateboard parks. They can't go to the movies. And when they finally started school again, they got to do it looking at a screen like this. And most kids, when they're in school, what's the number one thing they're waiting for? Recess. There is no recess. So it's like the kids are going to act out and be rebellious. And we have a whole lot of older kids, the teenagers, actually attacking and going against their parents because they want to go out and act like there is no virus. And the parents say no, and it's on. But, and then those that are real techie, you went overboard on the online spending. All you do now is shop online and can't stop the flow from happening. Looking at the cases coming to my office, the crises with porno is going up because you're sitting home all by yourself. What you gonna do? It's messed up because you're gaining weight, you're getting depressed, anxiety. Tired of looking at interacting through a screen. So now everyone's easily irritated. Things that you could have slid off before, now it gets on your last nerves too quick. And the final outcome is you begin to wonder, what's wrong with me? I just don't feel right anymore. Well, today we're going to be looking at questions around depression and anxiety. And again, I do not have all of the answers, but Pastor gave me a list of questions that the congregation had started putting in before, and I wrote down a few things. So before I give those who are watching an opportunity to ask your unique questions, let me just run down the list of questions that I already have here, and then we'll go from there. Now, some of these questions are general questions that we didn't have the answer to before the pandemic, but we'll give it a shot even today. Amen. How to deal with depression during this pandemic. Now that is, one of the things that this pandemic did is reveal the United States as one walking lie. We've been told over and over again, we're the greatest country in the world. We're with this, that, and a bag of chips. This country has revealed how jacked up, this pandemic has revealed how jacked up this country is. Our infrastructure sucks for a country that has as much money as we do. Our have and have nots get separated out as to who gets the services and who gets whatever they want. Our medical system, they don't want to talk social medicine where everyone gets treated the same. But now that you see you don't have social medicine, you can see all the hierarchies coming into place as to who actually gets these vaccinations and who gets treated and who doesn't. Our garbage has been revealed. So how do you deal with depression? A client brought me an article from the New York Times, February 22nd. and I'll just say this. In the article, full page, New York Times, that's big money. Navigating the current therapist shortage. So many people need mental health right now. Just about every clinician you contact is on overload. And including yours truly, we got to work on ourselves to make sure we don't burn out, because the phone is constantly ringing. I'm telling the pastor now at 7 o'clock, I'm getting ready to start this thing, and boom, the pager goes off with a 911. That's probably someone that knows I'm here right now at this time. So it's like it just comes and doesn't stop. And if you don't know how to set up your own boundaries and barriers to take care of yourself, you'll be overloaded before you know what happens. And it doesn't have to be directly in your family. But so many people are going through so much stuff now, you'll get overwhelmed by hearing about extended family or neighbors or members of the congregation. So how do you deal with depression during this pandemic? You're pretty much on your own. But here's the funny thing with depression. If you want to battle your own depression, first of all, you got to own the fact that you aren't feeling good. Because you aren't feeling good does not mean your faith isn't great enough. We're all humans and we're all flawed, and you will constantly go through stuff because we are in a fallen world and we are made up of this weak flesh, and the flesh goes through some garbage mentally as well. Now, here's the trick to dealing with depression. Do you know when you're dealing with depression on your own, non-medicated, you've got to do everything that depression is trying to keep you from doing. It's a trip how it works. If you're depressed, you have to eat healthily. But what happens to your appetite when you get depressed? Either you lose your appetite or you eat everything that's happening and that's not good for you. So you're eating garbage and junk. And that will add and further the depression. Too much sugar, too much salt, too much whatever. You have to exercise. You've got to get out and move to kick those endorphins in. But depression triggers what we call lethargy. Depression makes you not want to get up and do what you know you need to do. And that's both physically for exercise. That's a project you know you have to finish by Friday for work. That's whatever you have to do. You have to fight, because depression tries to slow you down to make you stop living, basically. Here's the tricky one. Depression will cause you to isolate yourself so that you have no social interaction. Well, that's real easy with this pandemic going down. Now, I'm not much into the technology and the Zoom and the FaceTime and all the technological interactive stuff that you can do. But I do keep the family rotating through with me, because if you isolate, which is what you're going to want to do if you're depressed, it's only going to cause the spiral to increase. You have to interact with other people to begin to get lifted. Depression will make you get easily irritated when things go wrong. So you decide, I don't want to participate in stuff, but you got to get out and do it anyway. You've got to interact with people that normally would have gotten on your last nerve, but you interact with them for their benefit, to help them, not for you, because your spirit will be lifted when you help people who are worse off than you are under these times. And the last thing depression will do, which is a cold-blooded thing, but if you praise God while you feel bad and begin to focus on the blessings that are there that you have been ignoring, your depression will lift. But depression will make you not want to praise or glorify God. And depression will want you to focus on the negative things that are happening in your life that are messing you up, not all the blessings that are there. And you'll be amazed at how subtle it'll be, because I have people coming into my office, believers, talking about nothing is happening right in my life. I'm up, maybe I might, job might get screened out next week and can give me a whole litany of the negative things. And I said, nothing has happened in your life decently? He said, nothing, everything's going again. I said, well, how'd you get here today? Well, I drove. You drove what? You drove the car God gave you. Did you eat before you got here, or are you hungry? Did I get something out the refrigerator for you? Oh, no, I had breakfast. What are you talking about? You had no blessings today. But we would stop looking at that. So how do you deal with the depression? You fight everything that depression tries to make you do that will worsen your situation rather than improve it. Don't isolate, eat healthy, exercise, focus on the blessings that God has given you and praise Him for it. And then what are some of the signs or behaviors of an individual who's suffering from depression, and how do you help them? Well, I just told you the signs. They're going to isolate. They're not going to want to contact you. They're going to do things that destroy themselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They're going to pull back from God. They're going to think all negativity, and they're going to eat the wrong things. They're not going to exercise. They're not going to have the energy. So if a person is depressed, and especially if they're severely depressed and you suspect that they're potentially suicidal, you've got to bug them more than anyone you've bugged before. They are not going to answer their door the first time you're banging on it or calling them. Bug them. Make them get up and answer that door. Make them interact with you. Because they'll find once they interact in one way, shape, form, or fashion, they're going to start feeling better. But they're going to resist you and they're going to avoid you to the best of their ability. So how do you help people like that? You bug them. Even when they're on their last nerve, just keep interacting with them and bug them. And that's hard for me to say because you're talking to a hermit. I don't like people bugging me. But it works. Okay. How do I handle my teenager who's starting to use drugs and alcohol? Plus, they're being disobedient and disrespectful. Well, we didn't know how to do that before the epidemic or the pandemic, but it's pretty much the same thing. You have to understand teenagers are coming of age where they have God gave us all our own free will. So hopefully, first of all, you've been educating them from the beginning as a child, letting them know, number one, what you expect of them, what the drugs will do, and number two, what God expects of them of having a sober mind. Once you educate them, this is tough. I did it with my kids and they didn't like it at first, but I befriended their friends. Now, everything's technology now. They didn't have all these computers. But when my kids were growing up, we made our house the after-school hub so that I could see who it was, and everyone knew the Adams house. Calling home from school, you got to spend 30 minutes on your way home from school before you had to go home and do your homework, because we had snacks waiting for you. And that brings both the males and the females in food. But when they came through the house, two things happened. Number one, I got to see the little thugs my knuckleheads were hanging with and develop a relationship with them. And number two, once I developed a relationship with the thugs, my kids didn't want to hang with them anymore because they figured they'd snitch on them. But yeah, kind of befriend the friends. And then when my kids wanted to act disobediently toward me, believe it or not, it was their friends that tightened them up out of their respect for their relationship with me. But most parents are so busy with work, you can't even have a relationship with your own children. How are you going to do it with the rest of the community? I ask, well, you have to figure what your priorities are. I'm promising you the outcome is going to determine the amount of time and energy you invested. They're only with you for a moment. And finally, a lot of parents lose the fact that your children need you more than you need your children. So I stopped being the family disciplinarian way back when the kids were pre-adolescent. It was no longer you do this, you get punished, you don't do this, you get punished, or you earn. All I use is I said, I am no longer the disciplinarian. I'm just the paymaster. You want to be grown? Your life is now a job. You will get paid for everything you do. Now, a lot of parents say, well, that's bribing them, isn't it? They're doing what they should be doing. No, that's not bribing them. That's teaching them how to survive in the United States of America. This is a capitalist system. What do you do that you don't expect to get paid from? And it doesn't have to be monetary. In fact, very seldom was it monetary. But like I said, your children need you more than you need your children. So anything my children wanted, they had to earn. They could get anything they wanted that wasn't a detriment to them, but they had to earn it. So if they wanted to get freedom on the weekends to go out to visit their friends or whatever, the question was always, what's it worth to you? And we negotiated everything. So I didn't have to remind them of their chores. They knew if your chores aren't done when I get home from work. Now, it did get vicious after a while. My wife thought it was vicious. I thought it was very effective. But we have a blended family. We ended up with 4 teenagers at one time. And my rule was your homework was to be completed and on the back of the couch for me to check when I came home after work, and your chores were to be completed. And of course, there's usually chaos in the house because mom would get home before me, and they had converted her into Godzilla before I got to the door. So she decided she was going to hang out after work an extra hour, so I would get home half an hour early. And I said, you don't have to do that. All you got to do is give me that mantle of authority in this family that you keep rescuing every time I come down on these kids. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, it's a simple process. They're going to earn their dinner. They all want to eat. And she said, what? You'll have CPS here in a minute? I said, no. They will always have apples, oranges, and milk in that refrigerator if that's what they want for dinner. But if they want what's good cooked on the meal here, they earn that by having their homework done and their chores completed when I walk in this door. I just walked through to see who wanted to eat and who didn't want to eat. Wow. Now, you have to understand, it took me 2 hours to convince my wife that a child does not die from starvation by starvation from missing one meal. But she was so fed up, she said, do whatever. And in our blended family, fortunately, it was my baby boy that didn't do the chores and the homework the first night. So when we're having our fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, I prayed, blessed the food, and I said, okay, Marcellus, I don't know why, but I see you decided not to eat tonight. Because I'm just a paymaster. I just pay. I can't stop you from doing it, but I'm going to back whatever decisions you make in life. I got your back, buddy, 100%. You don't want to eat, you don't have to eat. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you said you didn't want to eat through your behavior. So you don't eat tonight. You're not going to let me eat? No, I'm not going to let you eat. You chose not to. What kind of dad are you? You won't even let me eat. And I said, is that how you were looking at it? I thought my boy was fasting and praying. What kind of dad would I be to break his fast? I'm just going with your decision. I got your back, whatever you decide. So they learn. You meet curfews on time because they always wanted later curfews. You didn't just get later curfews. You showed me you could go a month coming in at 9 on time and we would up it a half an hour. You showed me you can come in another month at 9:30 and we would up it every half an hour until you hit the maximum time out for minors in the city of Union City, which was 11 o'clock on a weekday, 12 on the weekend. You earned it. I'm not here to police you. I'm just here to pay you when you get your rewards. So homework had to be done. Well, it got rough. We had to be done to eat. Chores, disrespect. Oh no, we didn't have any disrespect. Because disrespect would close the negotiation table until you could clean it up. So I'm trying to pay you and you closing the pay office. So no, there would be no disrespect. And I look at how parents tolerate the disrespect from the kids. There was no raising of the voices or hollering and cussing or I'm going to do this or do that. Now, the baby boy, he was the most trying. I can remember when he was 16 and a half, he came up with this thing, I'm going to run away. And I said, excuse me? And he said, I'm going to run away. And I'm saying, son, it's a runaway if you leave and someone looks for you. I call that moving out. Are you ready? You get no benefit for doing these threats. I mean, I could handle myself at 16 and a half, 17. I'm assuming you think you grown. Show me what you can do. But if they can finagle you and get you twisted around their arm, yeah, you're not going to be able to you're going to lose the control. So handling the drugs and the alcohol, all you can do is educate them and try to convince them and give them examples. But I'm sorry to say that has not worked. It didn't even work in our family. You can show them family members who were jacked up from this stuff. Mm-hmm. And they would still be tempted to try it. So just be there for them. And the second part that's most disgusting is we really don't have adequate treatment programs in this county or in this country to deal with the number of adolescents that are going through drug and alcohol problems. You got a few on paper that look good, but when it's time to get entry, gain entry, unless you got the big money like the haves and put them in a private facility, we don't have anything for our children. That's why the poor communities have so much of a drug and alcohol problem. But let them know the love is at home. So if they want to turn around, this is where the support is. Next, what do I do if I discover my teenager is sexually active? We go back to educating again. Now, my wife and I disagreed on this one, but you've got to educate them biblically and you've got to educate them worldly, because the world is waiting to give them an education if you're not there first with them. So we would do Bible study, and I would show them in the Bible that, you know, you don't want to get caught up in fornication. You don't want sex until you're married. You don't want whatever. And of course, they're being children. They said, well, Dad, did you do it? And I said, well, heck yeah, I did it. But that's a whole different story. I'm trying to raise you better than I was raised, number one. Number two, I wasn't in the church, but I'm just showing you what you want to do if you're going to be in alignment with God's will. I said, so I know you're going to cherry pick and figure which ones in here you should do. So we got into bestiality. I said, now you don't want to have sex with a horse. You don't want to, and we got into homosexuality. We got into everything there, but I know you're going to have free choice. So I told my kids at dinner, so now that the girls, when they reached adolescence, I said, okay, now I'm going to take you to a trip to Planned Parenthood. And my wife said, no, that's condoning sex. I mean, you bring them to Planned Parenthood, that's going to be a mixed message. I said, it's not a mixed message. I sat them down. I showed them what the Lord said. And I said, and if you choose to be disobedient to God, and you choose to be disobedient to your parents, then you better get ready for what the world has waiting for you out there. So there's no confusion in their mind as to what we wanted, but they have free will. I know a lot of parents say, now, I don't want you to have sex. So if you're getting ready to be involved in any of that stuff, you come to me and ask me questions. Yeah, right. I bet you your parents told you that too. And how many of you ran to them before you had sex the first time? So all I'm saying is, if they think the environment is safe, they do come to you, because mine came to me. So my wife said, I have nothing to do with this because I think it's a contradiction. So I said, no problem. I'll set it up. This is back when Planned Parenthood was free and right up the street from my office on B Street in Hayward. I called, set up the appointment, and then they started asking questions. Okay, sir, you're going to bring your two daughters in. How old are they? When was the date of their last period? Well, I said, whoa, I got to get this information. I'll get back to you. So we're at the dinner table, and I said, okay, I got an appointment set for you this coming Friday at Planned Parenthood up from the office, but I got my notebook out, and I said, okay, about decent basic information. And of course, the girl was, ooh, yeah, what do you need to know? And I said, okay, so Sydney, when was your last period? And my wife said, oh, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. Now, let me tell you how good God is. They went to the meeting. They called the two girls in. My wife stood up to go and said, oh, no, ma'am, this is for them. You don't get to come in here with them. This is the United States. These kids are over 14. They have the right to do whatever they want to do. So they brought the girls in. There was a black woman that was treated. He said that was counseling them. And after it was over, I said, well, how did it go? And they were looking kind of weird. And I said, how did it go? And they said, not what we expected. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said she lined us up in there, and they had all this apparatus lined up. And the first thing, she turned to us and she said, you two look like you're in the church. Are you Christians? And they said, yes. And they said, and what part of this are you interested in? Because she was a Christian. And she said, now your parents set this up, because that means they're suspicious you are not going to be obedient to them and God. So they're trying to give you an opportunity not to have babies prematurely brought into this world if you're going to be that disobedient and disrespectful of the guidelines of your home and the God you say you're serving. He said, but here's the first line. I'm going to give you different levels of birth control. The first one is the one that you should work on to treasure your body for the man that you're going to marry eventually. It should be a prize for him. The first line of birth control you should always use is abstinence. Now, do we want to have a discussion as to what pressure is out there that makes you think you can't say no when you're supposed to? Was nothing of what they expected. Then after they went through that process, then she said, okay, now if you are going to start, here's what they do to try to keep from getting pregnant when you're sinning. And gave them all the guidelines. So when they came out, it was like, well, we weren't quite ready for that. I said, you got it at home, but maybe you'll listen to it from the world if you won't listen to it from here. But it goes to educate. Don't panic when you find out, and don't become punitive. Now that's hard because you've invested in these kids. And it's hard because you personalize it as you dare to defy me to that degree. And you panic because you've been there and you went through it and you know what the possible outcome is. So don't panic. Don't become punitive. Become inquisitive. Find out how did we get here? Now, they're going to ask you some very direct questions. And if you lie, they know it's okay to lie when you're asked direct questions about sex. They're going to ask you some very direct questions. You want them to be truthful with you? You better be truthful with them. And I'll give you an example before we move to the next question. We had been married, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months. We're at the dinner table where all the open discussions occur. One of the girls asked the question, do you two plan on having any more kids? And I said, well, we got half an army already. I don't think we plan on having any more. And they said, well, if you don't plan on having any more kids, why are you guys still having sex? Now, my wife, she wanted to ask the question that I didn't want to know the answer to. Well, what makes you think we're having sex? I didn't want to hear that answer. But I said, I'll answer the question directly. Your mother can ask it according to her view. I said, I'll tell you why I'm having sex. I'm having sex because it feels good. Now, at that point, the oldest boy's covering his ears, running out of the room. He didn't want to hear it. I said, that's why I'm having sex. It's one of those blessings God gave us in marriage. Now, you're going to get to the point where you are going to want to have sex. But before you have sex, you need to ask yourself some serious questions. If you have sex, you just made a possibility you're going to bring a child into this world. Can you support that child? Have you prepared your life to give that child the life that you want growing up? Because if you're not there yet, you need to hold off on the sex. I said every birth control measure that you can have only gives a percentage. You use a condom, it's 99% safe. You use birth control, it's 98% safe. What does that mean? That means 1 out of 100 times a pregnancy can occur. Or 1 out of 98 times, 2 out of 100 times, you could get pregnant. So keep having sex 100 times, and guess what they're probably going to call you? Mama and daddy. It's not foolproof. So you got to determine, have you prepared your life to have this child possibly come on the scene? And that doesn't even get into the sexually transmitted diseases you got to look out for that can mess you up for life where you can't have children.
Dr. Adams had a question on the number 6, how you deal with death during the pandemic.
Okay. And okay, question number 6, moving along. Oh Lord. Next question, how to deal with death of a loved one during the pandemic. Now, a lot of that has happened in this country. And here's the deal. Everybody deals with death differently. There is no one key way to deal with death. People grieve differently. People have to deal with death differently than the norm because you can't come together as a group to console one another. You doing everything virtual, and this doesn't work when you're trying to deal with stuff emotionally with the technology and whatnot. How do you deal with death during the pandemic? With having the opportunity for minimal opportunity for grieving and for producing closure that you would do in a repast and all of that. But you better huddle up as a family. Huddle up as a family. They used to have a number. 10 can participate, and that includes the pastor and the funeral parlor folks and everything else. But all you can do, because most of us have experienced death during this pandemic, including yours truly. My mother died in October, and she was in a rehab facility where we couldn't even go to see her during her final days because they wouldn't let us in, and she couldn't make it to the window to look out of the window at us. That's hard. That is very difficult. Not just for the family, but you feel for the person, especially if it's an elderly person, what they went through by themselves during their final hours of fading out. All you can do is come together as family. Now, in general, funerals, deaths bring the worst out in families. You'll see more fighting during and after a funeral than any other time when families come together. But this is a time you better be prayed up and come together as a supportive unit. Don't be proud. Pride will keep you from seeking help in grief therapy when you need it. So sometimes the family is not together enough to be able to be supportive. They're actually a burden. So you will need to either get through friends or through therapy, find someone where you can pour all of this grief and pain out, or you will spiral yourself negatively and end up messing up. I know one of the questions on here had to do with death of both parents or whatever. Which one was that? What sort of communication do you have with a coworker or friend who lost his wife during surgery, goes into depression, and then the friend himself eventually commits suicide? So how do you help someone like that? You bug them. They may avoid you. They may not want to talk about it. But if they're your friend, if they disappear, if they isolate, bug them, not over the death, but in contacting them, letting them know what a treasure they are for you and your life. You are a friend. This is what I treasure in you. This is what I need from you. Because most people that lose purpose in living for themselves can find purpose in living for someone else. Now, in this case, they looked like they left behind a 19-year-old male and a 16-year-old female. Lost both parents, one to surgery, mom to surgery, then dad to suicide. That's double jeopardy. Those two individuals, they need to be surrounded by love, which means breaking protocol in a lot of cases during this pandemic. I can only imagine what it feels like, but I'm hearing families over and over and over again, especially in the Latino community, where the kids have lost both parents back to back with the pandemic going on because of the virus. And it's like, where can they go for services? They don't have the traditional services, therapy out there waiting for them. And it's at that time, if they are truly a friend, if it's truly someone you love, if someone you're really concerned about, you show up whether they ask you or not. Let me tell you the traditional thing that happens when a person loses someone. You don't know what to say. You don't know what to do. So the last thing you tell them is, I'm here for you. If you have a need of anything, just give me a call. Ain't nobody gonna call you. I mean, it sounds good, but when people are messed up after a death, they are not going to call you. Hey, I don't have food in the pantry. You think you could bring something over? Or hey, I don't even have the energy to cut my lawn. Do you think you could get someone? They're not going to call you. You bug them, show up and do it anyway. If anything, you make them come up and tell you, get off my property. Leave me alone. But that's not going to happen. They're going to be so grateful that you did connect with them. I was sitting here thinking of blowing my own head off till you knocked on the door and came in. Oh, I was thinking of that. They're not going to call you. So in this case, the 19-year-old, they're going to say, I'm all right, I'm cool. The 16-year-old, I don't know how she's going to deal with it. But people need to surround those two and make them interact with you. Make them have to avoid you. Try to get them into a treatment program. There's a shortage of therapists. I have no idea what their insurance is like, but you've got to try. And if it's connected with the church family, that's prime time for the church to act like the church. We're all individuals. We all have our own private lives. We all are overwhelmed, but that's the time for the church to act like the church. When I lost my mother, I'm a hermit. I don't like people bugging me. I didn't even tell my church family that I'd lost her. Because I didn't want to answer all the phone calls and the people coming to the door. We were doing our own internal family thing. And they found out 4 months later that she had passed. And they were livid. They said, as much as you help everybody else, you're not going to be available. And I said, but you don't understand. When other people come to help me, it's actually a burden to me. So let me grieve my way. But I've had food brought in from places I normally wouldn't have eaten. But they had food, Grubhub to the house. They've had all kinds of stuff. It's 4 months late. But I said, okay, this is the love that we're talking about. I see what they're trying to do. But others that aren't holding up as well and putting together as well. I figured my mother had a very healthy, blessed life. She was in her 90s. She had her 70 plus. She had dementia. I could see the pain she was going through. It was time for her to go. But people that get caught by surprise with a death through surgery, car accidents, overdoses, or whatever, go after them, please. Please go after them.
Can we tackle number 7? That's been the
7.
highlight. Number 7.
How do I help or get help for someone who is addicted to drugs or alcohol and don't think they have a problem? Sorry to say, there's not much you can do. What I do is I give them the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM-5's definition of a problem. How do you know if you're using drugs or alcohol? How do you know when it's a problem? And all I do is educate them, and then I sit back and wait. Now, how does the Diagnostic Manual define a problem? Because you do have a lot of functional users out there. I said they define it as a problem when your use of the substance causes you trouble or negatively impacts your school or work, your social life, or your family life. So does your drinking or drug use cause you to miss work and you're getting in trouble on the job, or your grades are going down? Then you have a problem. Does it impact your social life where you're losing friends and you're not getting invited to parties anymore, or people are avoiding you? Then you have a problem. Is it tearing your family apart? Is everybody in the home mad at you all the time? Are you stealing from your family to keep this thing going? Have you checked out from the family so you're not then you have a problem. And just like my own mother was alcoholic, all I can say is call me when you're ready to get help. I can afford to put you into any treatment program out there. But we can't control another person. All we can do is educate and be available when they're ready. Everyone has free will, and pray for them mightily, that they don't accidentally or intentionally take themselves out before they own the fact that they have a problem. And some people are pretty strong. They can tear up half the devil before they finally say, you know, I think I need help. Some people really have to be left out there on their own before they'll finally figure, okay, either this is embarrassing or I don't want to be by myself, and before they finally say, yes, I have a problem. But then be available to them with a plan when they come.
Moving with that, number 11 says, how can we start and implement a mental health strategy awareness in schools and or church?
Church, I can see. Okay, how can we start to implement mental health strategies and awareness in schools? I have no idea, because most schools are political instruments. You know, I used to hang out in the Oakland schools with buddies of mine who volunteered to go in as mentors to deal with this. And when we started revealing how desperate the Oakland public school system was with this mental crisis going on and ignoring it, so because they didn't have the money to pay for the services they're supposed to provide, they escorted us off the campus. So I don't know. Again, it can come down to educating, but it depends. All I can say is you got to contact the county school board and the city school board members and start from up there to see if it's an issue. But you got to understand, way back in the 90s, when the severe budget cuts started coming to the schools, the very first thing they started eliminating were the counselors. Because they saw it as a low priority, and the few counselors they had left, they no longer were available to treat the kids that had issues going on. All they could do, they were overloaded with changing class schedules when they didn't want to be in this class or that class. I mean, they got overwhelmed because they left so few available to deal with the kids at the elementary, junior high, and high school level, or middle school now they call it. They did another thing too that they eliminated. When I was in school in the 60s and the 50s, back when the dinosaurs roamed the land, the boys had one person in particular that was their number one confidant, mental health provider. You know who that was? Coach. They actually paid for coaches to be there for basketball, football, wrestling, or whatever. A lot of them taught as well, but they got the bonus salary for being there, and you went to coach when you had a problem in your home or dealing with something personal. And do you know who the little girls went to? The little girls went to that elderly, almost retired janitor that was pushing the little garbage cans around and whatnot, because they felt more comfortable talking to grandpa over what was going on, and he'd let them help pick up the paper, but he's there with them, hearing all these family problems. They had like family there in the school. Well, you know, if you've been a janitor for so many years, you got a whole lot of retirement coming. So they started cutting those positions down and contracting out. So they're bringing in janitors in high school that are 1 to 2 years older than the students. So the students not only can't come to them for wise consult, the janitors are hitting on the kids. So it's like they eliminated both of those go-to categories. I don't know. I don't have an answer as to how you can bring, other than start at the top and try to get the top to see it as an issue.
All right, so at this point, we pretty much answered all of our general questions. Is there anyone out there, now, he gave you the disclaimer that you don't have all the answers, but is there anyone that has a question that's on the Zoom, or put it in the chat? You can come off mute and ask your question specifically. You have anyone? Or you can put it in the chat and I can read it.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a distinction between anxiety and depression?
Yes. The distinction and the medication to treat it, if you go to a psychiatrist, oftentimes is different. Depression is when you lose your energy. You're sad most of the time. You want to isolate. You're just feeling hopeless and you're feeling down and you can't do what you know you need to do. Anxiety is nervousness. Anxiety is fear. Anxiety is you can't calm your spirit because you can't stop thinking about stuff that has you on edge all the time. So depression, you're down. Anxiety, you tend to be up. And if you have both, you become bipolar and you can start acting too hyper or you can get too down and it can go back and forward. Did I answer your question?
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Any other questions on the floor? Anyone else? I don't see any. What is this? I say, how important is medication? How important is meditation to self-care?
How important
Meditation to self-care.
is medication?
Meditate.
Oh, meditation.
Someone.
Meditation is extremely important to self-care. Now, when I say meditation, a whole lot of different things goes through people's minds because they have different definitions of meditation. The Bible tells you to study and meditate on the word. That will be calming to you in reviewing it. But you get into Eastern religions and their meditation is checking in the eye in the middle of your forehead and checking to see what's going on. But the meditation that you need to do, I call introspection. The meditation you need to do that calms you physically, it will lower your blood pressure. It calms you mentally. It will take the worries of your day, your anxiety away. It calms you spiritually. It will make you feel you've reconnected with God. It's the meditation where you sit, you breathe, and you focus on the things Paul told you to focus on. And he tells you to focus on, get away from the stinky thinking, the evil thinking, the sinful thinking. And he has a list of things to think on. Goodness and kindness, not just the fruit of the spirit, but he gets into think of nice interpersonal things. Think of the blessings that are coming your way. So you're leaning toward hope rather than disaster. So if you can calm yourself through your breathing and you can change your channel in your mind as to what you're focusing on. What I tell people is if you're getting ready to take an exam or you're getting ready to go into someplace and all you're thinking of, did I study enough? Boy, I knew I took that nap. I should have studied those extra 15 minutes. I don't know if I covered it. Stop that thinking. And imagine, first you remember, where were you when you felt the calmest and the most at ease in your life? Where were you? Were you on the beach? Were you in the forest? Where were you? Because that's what you want to place yourself in your mind again. For me, it's out on the water. I'm out on the water. People say, you sure love to fish. Basically, I love being calm and meditating out on the water. The fish is a side benefit. Or as the bumper sticker says, my worst day fishing is better than my best day at work. Because I come back. My wife hates to see me gone so much, but she doesn't complain. I said, why'd you start complaining about me going fishing? And she says, oh, I still hate for you to go, but I sure love the Craig that comes back. My patience is back. My tolerance is back. I'm chill. So yeah, meditation is a key point. And
Thank you, doctor. I get you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? We're coming near the end.
And yeah, we're gonna get ready to close this out. It's about 8 o'clock now. Take one more question if you have one out there. You have a burning question?
I have a question.
Right.
It's more of a
Like,
comment. Yeah, more of a comment. Because during the pandemic, I suffered severe depression, and it was a process. It didn't happen when you say meditate. It took me about 2 weeks to get out of my funk. that really during the meditation, what really helped me was getting sick of how I felt. I got fed up with how I was feeling. And then I had to really train my way of thinking to say, instead of having a down week, or I'll allow myself to have a down moment, but not a down day, if that makes sense. And then I started, instead of focusing on all of the things that were going wrong, I meditated, okay, when this happens, this is going to happen. And my hope came into what was going to become instead of what was. And that's what really got me through the process. And then separating myself from people that don't have that type of thinking to help me get out of the funk that I was in, really helped me with getting out of the depression stage.
It's very good feedback, very good sharing. I appreciate that. And if you want to know the scripture that backs that, change your thinking. Instead of complaining. They tell you, go through all this stuff, count it all joy, but remind yourself, for we know all things work together for the good, to those that love the Lord and to the called according to his purpose. So no matter what pain you're going through, find the good that's behind it and focus on that. But we tend to focus on the negativity, and you're right, Mr. Jones, you got to get away from that stinking thinking and change the channel, I call it, and do exactly what you did and start focusing on the positivity and establish the hope again. I like that.
Amen. Well, that will conclude this. He was our inspiration for this, Reverend Mike Jones. We celebrate you. Thank you for bringing this up to us back in January. Got us here to April. Dr. Craig Adams, I want to thank you personally from the bottom of my heart. It's not just these that are here. We have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have our live streaming.
Praise God.
And they're all on and watching. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Revelation Christian Fellowship family, for allowing me to be your pastor and stay transparent to the issues that are going on within the families and life of this church and other Christian families. We're not perfect, but we are forgiven. And so as we continue to grow throughout this pandemic and continue to lead on God, the word of God in Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not into your own understanding, but here's the catch. In all your ways acknowledge him, and here's the key. He shall direct your path. And if he's directing your path, he will help you to make it through this time. And so I'm going to close us out in prayer. Right now, thank you for being here. Heavenly Father, we come thank you for your grace and mercy. We thank you tremendously for the questions. We thank you for those that are watching across all the application platforms. We thank you today for Dr. Adams being here and blessing us on today with his knowledge, his wisdom, his love for you. And we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you, Revelation family. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
God bless y'all. Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
God bless you.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Adams. Hello. Thank you so much. This was beautiful.
Well,
Thank you, Doc.
thank you for
Thank you,
having
Doc.
me, Doc.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right. Good seeing you guys again.
God bless you. Good to see everyone on there.
Thank you, Pastor Wilson.
Man, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
I see you,
You're
B-Hub.
welcome.
I hear you, baby.